Welcome to the Grief and Belief podcast, where we share stories of hope. Thank you for joining us. We hope this powerful story will help you feel God's love for you today.
Welcome to another episode of the Grief and Belief podcast. I'm David Mickelson.
I'm KC Cowles.
And Casey, welcome back. So glad to have you on another episode.
Love being here. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, we couldn't get enough of you, so you're back.
Very kind.
I have been looking forward to this interview for a long time because we're excited to interview Ellie DuPaix to talk to her about the passing of her father. And Ellie and I met because she creates a lot of social media content. And as I look over my Instagram feed, I'm always seeing kind of grief related items. And she had such good content. And so I messaged her on Instagram. I was like, hey, Ellie, how would you feel about being on a podcast? And then she was really responsive and super kind. And then we realized we were both going to be presenting at the BYU Life After Loss conference. So we connected there. I got to meet her now husband, Chase, who I'm sure we will hear about in a little bit. And but we scheduled the interview to be 3 days before her wedding. And at some point, wisdom set in, and we thought probably not a great idea. So here we are a few months later. And so, Ellie, thank you for being willing to come join us on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for being patient with me. I don't know what I was thinking, packing my schedule full 3 days before the wedding, and it was finals week. So it was a wild one, but we finally made it a month and a half later, and I'm just so grateful to be here. So thank you.
I'm guessing you like to be busy. You were like, yeah, we can do it. It'll be just fine.
I love to be busy, and I think I can be busier than I can. I think I can handle more than I can. So I really like to stack my plate full.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we're grateful you're gonna be on to talk about your dad, Shawn, and to talk about kind of a message of hope related around kind of finding like God giving us purpose in our suffering and in our trials. And I think we're also going to talk a little bit about, God doesn't remove our suffering, but he uses it for our good. And so we're excited to get to that. But before we can get to the hopeful message, we need to get to know you a little bit more. So, Ellie, what would you want everybody to know about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't even know where to begin. The past 3 or so years of my life have been pretty wild, but I have been able to kind of learn a lot more about myself and rediscover myself in the past couple years. Ever since I graduated high school, I used to be a nursing major, but as we all do, switched my major to psychology. And I've been studying that for the past couple years. I'll actually graduate in April. And I absolutely love psychology, but mostly the connection between faith and psychology and just how the brain works and how God so perfectly designed the brain. It's so fascinating to me. And so that's a lot about what I talk about on my social media. And then I also do a podcast and I just talk about mental health, again, integration between faith and psychology. And it's super fun for me. I just have people recommend podcast episodes that they would like to listen to. And like I told you before this, I just lay in my bed in my PJs and record a podcast. So it's super casual and really fun. And I have loved how social media and the podcast has given me opportunities to meet some really cool people, help some really cool people. And it's offered a lot of healing to me. But yeah, other than that, I love the outdoors. I love running. That's when I feel the most connected to God, is when I'm out in nature. I'm not in Utah right now, but that's where I was born and raised, and I was in the mountains all the time. Just my favorite place to be. But yeah, recently I did get married. I actually married my brother's mission companion, so kind of masterminded that.
Classic story. Yeah.
Yes, seriously. So now we are out here in Ohio he's doing summer sales, and I'm just kind of figuring out what I want to do. So, yeah.
That's so awesome. Yeah, that's so good. It was fun to meet Chase
Mhm.
right before you got married, and fun to see what you post on social media. A lot of it's you and him now, which is kind of
Uh-huh.
fun to see the nature of your
Yeah.
relationship. And um, tell us what it was like growing up in your family.
Yeah. So I grew up with an older brother that was just not even a year and a half older than me. So we were super, super close. And my parents kind of struggled to have kids for a long time. So it was just the two of us growing up, very passionate relationship because that's just how it is when you only have one other sibling that's super close with you. You really love each other, but you fight like no other. So that was kind of my childhood. I was raised kind of like a tomboy because my older brother was doing sports, so that's what I was going to be doing, and I was always in competition with him. And um, then 10 years later, my family was blessed with our little angel child that is my little sister Josie, and she is just a little bundle of joy. And I'm super close with my little sister, even though we're 10 years apart. I feel like she's my firstborn. Like, she is awesome, and she's gonna make having kids really hard on me because she really was just the easiest child to raise. And then, yeah, also super close with my mom and was very close with my dad growing up as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. I bet you felt kind of like, yeah, like a second mother to
Oh,
your
yeah.
little sister, and
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
it probably doesn't change.
No, it's like killing me being out here in Ohio away from her. I'm like my child, but it's all
Yeah,
right. FaceTime is a good thing that we have nowadays.
yeah, and it'll make it sweet when you get to go back and see her again.
Oh yeah, that's my biggest thing that I'm learning being out here is like I love my people so much and I love my hometown and all the things. So it's a good thing to miss stuff.
Yeah. Now we're here to talk about your dad, Shawn, and so help us get to know him a little bit. What was he like? What was he passionate about? Yeah, maybe share some stories about him a little bit that would help us get to know his personality.
Yes, absolutely. I love talking about my dad. I think it's easy when someone's passed away to just remember them for how they passed away. And my dad passed away to suicide, and it's just such an aggressive word. And so I think that kind of is hard for people to get past sometimes. But I love talking about my dad because he was not how he passed. He's so much more than that. And he really was such an amazing dad. And when I think about my dad, I initially think of just this very strong, masculine person that he was, very loyal. The feeling that he always gave me was just safety, and that's probably what I miss the most. Is he made me feel so safe, and he also made me feel so capable. Like I said, I was kind of raised like a tomboy and raised in the way that whatever my brother could do, my dad wanted me to feel like I was just as capable, even if I was a few steps behind. But he just made me. He loved very deeply and loved his family very deeply. And he was also something we had in common was our love for the outdoors, like I mentioned earlier. He was really a simple man who just wanted a simple life. After he retired, he wanted to just go hide away in a cabin, go fishing all day long, and be in God's beautiful creation. And while I grew up, though, he was an orthodontist, very good at what he did, and very well known in the community, very loved in the community. We always described him as kind of an introvert in an extroverted job because you do have to be so outgoing in as an orthodontist. And so it was kind of exhausting for him sometimes, but he did it and he put his all into it. And when it came to the practice itself, he was very perfectionistic and it would really bother him if he didn't feel like he did something perfectly right. And he would always make sure to fix it. But I would say my favorite thing about his personality was that he was just such a big tease, especially when it came to like my mom or either of my grandmas. There's been many times he's somehow locked my mom in a porta potty bathroom. We have multiple pictures of it. Or my grandma's really scared of snakes, and so you can imagine the pranks that he would pull on them. Um, and so yeah, he was fun. He kept life fun.
Oh, I love that. That's I love what you said at the beginning. He's so much more than how he passed away.
Mhm.
And I think we do have that kind of uh when somebody passes away by suicide, I think a lot of people remember that, especially if they weren't really, really close to him, because they don't have all that other beautiful context to remember. And so I love that we can just talk about who he really was, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
I love that you talked about how he made you feel safe. I bet that was important to him as a dad of daughters. Casey and I both have a handful of daughters, and like that feeling as a dad to make your daughter feel safe is really powerful and so important. So I can imagine that's what he was going for, and he's grateful he helped you feel that way, you know.
Mhm. Mhm. For sure.
Um, so talk to us a little bit about your dad kind of prior to his passing. Oh, maybe what was going on in life or how he was feeling, and maybe take us up to when he passed away. And I think it was in February of 2024. Am I remembering that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So, like you said, my dad passed away to suicide, and it's very easy to create this idea of someone who passes away to suicide, like what they must have done or what they must feel guilty for or why they did it. And it's just not the case with so many people that I've talked to who have also lost people to suicide. And so it's crazy for me to even sit here and talk about the fact that not only my dad passed away, but that he did pass away to suicide, because he years ago, just 3 years ago, I would have described my dad as the most mentally strong person that I knew. I always knew that, like I said earlier, he was a very perfectionistic type of person, and he had a lot of OCD tendencies. Um, and he just never really could express it or be vulnerable to get the help, but be vulnerable enough to seek help for it. He always wanted to just be strong enough to overcome it. And so eventually he hit a really big mental breakdown in October of 2023. And I had just graduated high school. So I was up at Utah State University, actually, freshman year of college. And when I came home for Christmas break, so just 2 months after he experienced this mental breakdown, I knew immediately that something was off with my dad. Um, and I kept asking him. I was asking my parents. I'm like, "What's going on?" He was just acting super off, and everyone was being kind of hush hush about it. And then, which was weird for me because I'm the type of person that needs to know every single detail, and I don't. I'm like, "Just tell me what's going on." And so finally, one morning, after I was probably driving him crazy, he came into my room and just sat on the bed next to me, and I was just barely waking up, and he's just like, "I need to tell you something. I need to talk to you about something." And he just started crying. And I had seen my dad cry maybe once ever in my life before. And so immediately I just woke up and I sat up and I held his hand, and he explained to me um what he had been going through basically all of his life. Just the OCD tendencies, the ruminating in his head, and all of the anxiety that this OCD produced, and how it felt throughout his body, the anxiety in his chest, and how he could feel it in his arms, and how he's just been trying to push through and through and through, and something just broke. And he wasn't able to sleep anymore, which is what I really contribute most of this too is his lack of sleep. And so we went on a family vacation right after Christmas that year, and he ended up having to fly home early. And when I ended up having to go back to school, I had talked to my dad like every single day about these mental health issues that he was going through, and we got super, super close. We had never had a relationship that had been that deep or that vulnerable before. And I could also see we were also both growing a lot closer to Christ. I think we were both in um, an era of our life where we were just seeking truth. And he's gone all throughout his life having faith crisis type of things and just wanting to find the truth, which I always thought was very interesting. And so we had talked about it a lot. But at this point, it was just us coming closer to Christ and us um, kind of building a testimony of like that he is there and that he can heal. And so I went back to college and I just prayed and prayed and prayed. I sent my dad scripture verses all the time, just pictures of what I was reading, and just praying my heart out that Christ would heal my dad. And I really thought it would happen. I was like, okay, like he's going to heal from this and he's going to become such a better person and he's going to let his guard down and he's going to help so many other men that are probably going through the same thing. And it was just making so much sense in my head. And the problem was that he wasn't getting better. He went from 4 hours of sleep every night to 2 hours of sleep every night to a point where he wasn't sleeping at all. He was taking sleeping medications, doing everything that he could to try and sleep, and he just wasn't sleeping. And so at this time, I was going home every weekend, and I only lived an hour away from home, which was convenient. And February 24th, I was studying for my exam for anatomy the day before, and I just was home with my dad all day. And I remember watching him through the door window, just walking back and forth all day long, looking at his hands, watching his hands shake. He couldn't go to work, and at this point, he had never missed a day of work in his life until he experienced this mental breakdown. And so it was just really hard on him mentally. And then February 24th, the day after that, he ended up taking his life that morning, which we came home from church and discovered that. And so that's when it just really hit me, was the confusion. It was very, very shocking.
I've got a million questions. Casey, what's on your mind?
Oh, I just want to give you a big hug, and I'm just really sorry. I don't even know where to go yet, Dave. I'm
Yeah.
not as experienced in this as you are.
Yeah. So my first thought, when you first started talking about how your dad opened up to you, the first that I had, Ellie, was your dad had spent his whole life trying to make you feel safe, and then there was something about you that made him feel safe. Right? It was like you
Wow.
reciprocated all of that back to your dad so that he could open up, because it's not always easy for a parent to open up to their children about things like that, you know.
Mhm.
And so I just think it shows a lot about you and how you wanted to be connected to your dad and be there for him, that he felt safe enough to open up to you, which I
Mhm.
think is pretty awesome.
Thank you. I
Um,
appreciate that.
yeah, so kind of approaching to February as he was not doing great, were you guys worried about his safety in that way? Or you kind of had mentioned like dad's going to get better, he's going to help other people. And how was that? Like, how did you balance maybe some of those feelings or thoughts that you had as you saw dad maybe getting a little bit worse and worse, but hoping he was getting better and better?
Mhm. So that's the crazy thing about suicide ideation, is that when we think about suicide, we have this idea of someone that commits suicide, like I said earlier. Um, we never think that it's the people that we know. It feels so distant until it's your friend, it's your parent, it's your sibling that's experiencing it. And so for me, I have never met anyone that passed away to suicide. And so it wasn't really even a consideration in my mind, especially for who my dad was. Like, if it can happen to my dad, it can truly happen to anyone to struggle with suicide ideation. And I think it happens when I think the biggest risk factor is when someone feels like a burden. And I know that's how my dad felt, but he just wasn't in his right headspace. And so for me, it's like I almost felt like I don't need to give him like the reassurance that he isn't a burden, because obviously he's not a burden. He provides for me, he loves me, he makes me feel safe, just like I described the person that he was. Like, he was the greatest blessing in my life. And everything he did for me, it continues to bless me right now, and it will for my whole life. And so it just wouldn't even occur to me that he would think he was a burden. But I think that's exactly how the adversary works, is they creep in your mind, and the adversary creeps in your mind, and he convinces you that people would be better off without you, and he convinces you to stay silent about it. And so I would just say, like, if anyone is listening that knows someone who struggles with mental illness, and I don't want this to come off as like something that sounds scary, but never underestimate where their head might be. Because suicide ideation is such an easy trap that so many people can fall into, and just get convinced that people are better off without them, when it is so far from the truth. And I wish I could go back and just hold my dad and say, "You are the greatest blessing in my life. Like, you would never be a burden to me. It is an honor that you are sharing this with me, that you're being vulnerable with me, and that you're allowing me to grow in ways that I haven't before." And so, yeah, I guess I would just say you never expect it to be the people that you know and love.
Yeah, and I imagine if somebody's going through that, that's not the kind of thing that they would share, generally speaking, right? Like I'll share that I'm struggling, that I'm having difficult times, but those thoughts, if they're in my mind, are ones I'm probably going to keep to myself, and so you wouldn't necessarily know, right?
Mhm.
So so um, while being respectful, talk to us a little bit about your dad's passing. Like, you said you and your family came back to church and found him. I don't necessarily want to talk about that side of things, but just talk to us about that day and what ensued after dad had passed away.
Mhm. So we had gotten up that morning, and my dad hadn't been sleeping at all, and he didn't come upstairs that morning. He had been trying to sleep in my brother's room, who was on a mission at the time, because he was like, "I just need everything to be quiet. I can't have anyone interrupt me." So me and my mom and my sister were upstairs, and he was downstairs. He never came up that morning, and so we were like, okay, like maybe he fell asleep, because we had early church at 9 a.m. And so we rushed out the door and came home. I thought he would be, we had texted him, asked him to put some food on the stove, never responded. Um, Ended up finding out what had happened, and it was just like your whole life changes in an instant. And um, I would say like that whole day is kind of a blur for me, but I do remember just our door being wide open, and so many friends and family coming in and just scooping us up. Um, and the first couple days, I think it was like the second night after my dad had passed, it was the darkest feeling I had ever felt in my life, and just an undescribable amount of pain and confusion and anger towards God. I felt so bad for my dad, because I knew he was trying, And I just didn't understand. Like, if my dad was trying, then how could he let this happen? And so I was just upset with God, and I let him know it. And um, a couple days later, throughout that week, I was the recipient and the witness to so many miracles. To go from the darkest I've ever felt to feel God's love just wrapped all around me, and to know his undeniable love for me that fast, it was just an absolutely insane feeling, and a huge part of my testimony. And I was able to see how Christ can work through his people when we allow that to happen. And I would say, especially the power of prayer. I had so many people reaching out to me, letting me know that they were praying for me. And when people would come into our house, they would describe the feeling in our house like a tangible feeling, like they could feel the love of Christ in our house. And just so many miracles and answers that I was able to receive from God. And one of the biggest answers just being that we do have our agency, and maybe that wasn't God's plan that my dad had to die that way, but God has a plan for me now, and that he will help me find purpose in this pain, and he will allow me to help his children through this pain, just like his children had helped me through my pain.
That totally makes sense. I'm wondering if we can go back to the darkness. You turned on the light, and I was feeling the light, but I want to go back to the darkness for a second.
Absolutely.
I just want to, what questions were you wrestling with? Or like obviously you're angry that dad's gone, but like what sort of questions did you have, or what were you telling God, like, about life that was making you feel so dark and down?
Mm-hmm. I felt so upset because my dad and I had both tried so hard, and I saw my dad, because he was coming so much closer to Christ in his suffering, he was becoming so much less judgmental and genuinely so much more Christ-like. And so I was like, this is going to be like, this can be something beautiful. He can grow from this, and it can transform our family, and he can help so many people. And that just made sense to me. Like, this is God's plan. And we've already suffered enough. Like, it's so hard to watch a parent suffer. And so then when my dad passed away, it was like everything I thought that was going to happen, and everything, like how I was trying to make sense of what was going on, it completely shattered. And my brother's on a mission, and it's just me and my mom and my little sister, who's 8 years old at the time. And I'm in the middle of school. I'm pursuing the education that I thought I was supposed to get at the time. And I was supposed to have an exam the next day. I dropped out of school. I dropped everything. And I was just like, all this inspiration and nothing. Like, it just all breaks down. And I hate admitting this, but part of me was like, well, then there can't be a God if he would let this happen. And I just felt so much anger. And I wanted to deny God, because I was like, that's the only way I can make sense of it in my head. And so I think that was the deep darkness, is feeling like I was denying God, something that I knew was true, but I just couldn't make sense of it in my head, of how he could still be there and love me even though this horrible thing had happened.
Yeah, I can feel like, okay, God has a plan. Like, again, before your dad passed away, life is hard, but God's got a plan, and I can see how this can all work out. To, I don't even know that God exists anymore. That's a big shift to make over a couple of days' time, right? And again, I think to your point, like, I know he exists, but I sure don't feel like he exists. And I don't like that feeling inside.
Yeah.
When you were saying that this wasn't part of his plan, but that he has a plan for you, I went directly to that plan was pre-architected, that the source of your healing will be through the atoning blood of Jesus Christ, and that ultimately leads to the purpose and all of that for the meaning of what the go forward plan is. But when you said it, it just struck me so profoundly that he has a plan for you, and it's that it was pre-architected,
Hmm.
that plan was put in place.
Yes,
It's very
absolutely.
powerful.
So Ellie, you talked about over a little bit of time. It doesn't even seem like it was that long. You had a major change, and it happened through prayers, miracles, and people coming into your life. Could you maybe just double click into some of those experiences that you had that really seemed meaningful to help you break out of this darkness and experience the joy of the Savior again?
Hmm. Yeah. So the week after my dad passed was like the most unworldly time of my life. Like I said, I experienced the deepest darkness that I didn't even know was possible to experience. And then by the end of the week, at my dad's funeral, even, it was just like this light that I never wanted to let go of. And um, we were just so blessed because we had so many people coming in our home, bringing us dinner every single night for months. And I didn't get out of bed until like 1 or 2 p.m. for, I believe, the first 3 months after my dad had passed away. And um, I just witnessed miracle after miracle after miracle, whether it was someone calling me and telling me exactly what I needed to hear at the time, or praying and then reading the scriptures and getting an answer from God through the scriptures, or a lot of the time it was just taking my dog and going up into the mountains for a sunset walk, and just this undescribable feeling of love and knowing that my dad is taken care of and that Christ's love is all that matters. And so I'm a very productive type of minded person, and so, which is not always good. Sometimes at the end of my day I'm like, "Okay, was I productive enough today?" Or I'm always thinking about what's next. What do I need to do next? But at this time in my life, I was so present. And I think that allowed God to just kind of guide me and inspire me. And so that's when I knew I needed to share this love that God had for me. And I needed to share um, things that I had learned about mental health and about healing and about growing. And ultimately, I needed to connect with people because I knew that there were other people who had experienced similar things that I had experienced. And I think relationships is one of the greatest blessings that we have on this earth, that we get to connect with people who even understand in the slightest what we're going through. And so I felt very inspired to start the podcast that I now have, that I do weekly, which is called the Her Horizon podcast. And I never would have done this if I hadn't been put in such a vulnerable place, because it's hard to put yourself out there and just go for it. But I felt like I genuinely had nothing else to lose, and I just did not care at this point. And so I recorded my podcast. I told my story. I told a little bit about my dad's story, and I just put it out there. And what I thought was going to be something extremely healing for other people and helpful for other people, which was my intention behind it in the beginning, the podcast has been the most healing thing I've ever done for myself. It's helped me find myself again. It's helped me become very in tune with the spirit. As I think about these topics that I talk about each week, I pray about them, and I feel very guided by God. And um it continues to heal me on the never-ending healing journey that we're on in life. And my mom was also able to start a foundation called the Stay Mentally Strong Foundation for men who suffer with mental illness. And when I thought my dad was the only one, because again, before I had this idea of people who commit suicide, who have they probably struggle with addictions, or like you can just tell. And when, of course, that's not the case. And I thought my dad was like the only one who it just seemed to come out, it seemed to come out of nowhere. And there were so many men who you would never imagine that suffer with mental illness that came out and were like, I went through something just like that. And it feels so good to know that I'm not alone. And it's been so helpful for them. But again, it's also been so helpful for my mom and I to know that my dad does have community, and to know that he wasn't the only one, and that we can help men who also struggle with mental illness, and that my dad is so proud of us for doing that because he knows, um at to some degree, how hard it is to suffer in the way that they do.
Yeah, I imagine he's one of the partners in all of your ventures. Like I
Mhm.
imagine he is helping things come to pass. Do you kind of feel that way as well?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yes, and I mean, I won't go too much into detail, but, like, my mom has had, like, just so many dreams or spiritual experiences, and, um, that just constantly remind her that my dad is guiding her, and she is so led by the Spirit. And at the end of the day, like, both of us are like, we don't know what we're doing, but we're called to do it. And so we're just trusting and having faith and letting God guide us. And it's been such a blessing.
Hmm.
Something, man, something that you said about like feeling directed to start your podcast or to go a certain direction. Isn't it interesting how answers to our prayers come? You were following a prompting, endeavoring to follow the Lord's will of whatever purpose he had for you in your suffering. But the answer came that it became healing to you. And it's just interesting the parallels that I'm seeing, that you followed the prompting, put faith into it, just took a step forward, launched a podcast and did it sort of hesitantly. But then the blessings that have come from just taking those faithful steps forward.
Hmm.
I think it's fascinating how answers to prayer come. Uh,
Hmm.
any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's interesting because I've shared my grief journey on my podcast a lot, which it's so healing for me to talk about. Um, I'm kind of the person that just every thought that I have to put it into words and put it out there into the world or say it to someone. And so the podcast has been awesome for me. But after my dad had passed away, I moved home and I stayed home for a year. I called it my hibernation era. And I just let myself grieve. I didn't know how to grieve, and I didn't know what I would feel. And I remember deciding at one point, like, I am not going to ever feel angry at my dad. I'm not going to have anger in the grief journey. And then years down the road, I end up moving out, and I experience grief an entirely different way as I have to leave my mom and my sister. And I'm like, where's my dad to take care of them? And then I'm going through the phase of anger. And just how, like you were saying, um, when you're praying for something and the answers to your prayers comes in such interesting ways. Through my podcast, I was also able to kind of share that journey as well of feeling grieving in a different way than I didn't expect, and have people reach out to me and say, "I can relate to you," and be able to talk about that and be like, "That prayer that was answered, that I was supposed to start this podcast, it's being answered again, and it's blessing my life again." And I just see that over and over and over again throughout my life.
Well, it seems like service becomes one of the ways in which we heal. So it's like you start a podcast to help other people. You get helped just by, regardless of the comments coming back and the things that you get to hear that way, just by expressing yourself and taking your thoughts into words and articulating them. That's a very healing experience. But then you
Mhm.
add to that the people who you're helping then come back and help you. It's just this virtuous cycle, but it all takes a willingness to step into the darkness and, steps of faith, I think, as Casey talked about. Like, that's what allows God to step into our lives and to make all of these beautiful things happen. And I'm thinking of you shared a scripture with us that's become meaningful to you. And I wonder if I could read that
Yeah.
verse, and then maybe you could share some thoughts on that, because I think it
Yes,
all
for
kind of
sure.
matches up with this. So this is Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God and to them who are called according to his purpose. Why has that become meaningful to you?
hmm For a long time after my dad had passed away, I was just like, I could not accept it. I could not get to that acceptance point in grief. And I just wanted my normal life back. I wanted to go back to school and not worry that my mom and my sister were alone. And I couldn't understand why this terrible thing had happened to good people. The big question, why do bad things happen to good people? And when I finally accepted it, that is when my prayer was answered, that, like, kind of like I said earlier, God didn't plan for that to happen, but he has a plan for it. And if I allow him to use me as an instrument, he will make good of this. It's not good what happened, and it will always hurt throughout my entire life, but also keeping that eternal perspective of, I know that I will see my dad someday, and I still don't understand most of the time. I still feel confused, but I've come to understand that I'm not supposed to fully grasp it in this world, and there's so much after this life. And I'm so grateful for that eternal plan that God has, and that he gives me the opportunity to be an instrument in his hands and to make big decisions with me, that I'm not alone in this, and that at the end of the day, because I'm giving it up to him and letting him use me, what I create will be good in the eyes of God.
Hmm. I love that. That's a powerful principle and a powerful message. Um, God can make good things come out of bad things, and you're a living testimony that that's the case. I think I'm thinking, like, God is always good. Like, it just always is. So when bad things happen, I get to have the experience of trying to find the good in it. If I'm going to find God, I'm going to have to find some good in it, even when it's hard and it's painful and I hate it. It's not a reflection of God not being good. And we can, you talked about that kind of experience you had. Like, I don't even know that he exists, but you resisted that. And because you did, you felt his love. You were open to promptings, open to all this love that he wanted to share with you, all this good that he had for you. You were open to receiving it from him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Ellie, you have just done wonderfully well. I'm so grateful for your willingness to share and just be vulnerable and share this message of hope that you have with our listeners. Is there anything you have left that you want to make sure that you cover before we move on towards our last question?
I think that's it.
Okay, good. That's what we want it to be.
Can I go back to one thing? Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
You were just a moment ago, you were talking about sort of what, I don't mean to missummarize it, but like what suicide typically looks like in men. But it's not always that case. That you could have someone that's put together, highly educated, has good career, all that, but it's this unseen, and then that your mother started a foundation, all of that. I guess as I was hearing that, it's just led me to think of especially within church community, how many times I've seen, if anybody in the church community knew that somebody was suffering to that level, the army of people that would be around surrounding that individual.
Mhm.
You go outside of the church community, I think it's just as strong. I like, just, I grew up in Southern California, knowing like the type of community I've lived around, and then of course here in Utah, but all around the world. When people see people suffering, they naturally want to help,
Mhm.
and it doesn't always look like a certain way, And so I don't necessarily have a question. Maybe if you have any additional thoughts to that, it's just more of like, there's a lot of strong men who are suffering. Therefore, what?
Mhm.
What's the next step? What's the encouragement? Is it to get professional help? Is it to reach out to a best friend? Is it what comes next from that?
I think the first step is to accept that struggling with mental health doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't define you in any sort of way. It means that you're human. And to look at it as an opportunity to connect with people and to just be open about it. Because when my dad was suffering and he found out that there was someone else who was struggling with OCD or depressive episodes or something related to mental illness, immediately he was like, "Can I go talk to them? Can I connect with them?" And I would say that we just need to get rid of the stigma that mental health means, especially for men, that men shouldn't struggle with mental health. I think it's a huge thing, especially in my dad's generation, where it was like, "Oh, you have anxiety? Like, toughen up and
Yeah.
get over it," Where it's like that is the last way that will heal you. That won't do anything good for you. It'll just bury and bury and bury until it's too much for you to bear. And so be open about it and get help before it is too much, whether that's talking to a friend or looking into therapy or going on social media and being part of some sort of social media group. There's so many resources nowadays, especially with social media and the fact that we can connect with people from all over the world. And sometimes, like, social media can be a negative influence, but if it's going to be here, why not take the good things that it offers us and use it for good?
So well put. Thank you.
And it's probably a good reminder. I'm sure there's some men who listen to our podcast who are struggling in their grief experience. They've had a spouse, a child, a parent pass away, and of course that could have a huge impact to their mental health. Um, and so I think what you have shared has been helpful, and we hope that any listener who's maybe feeling that they're in that situation would reach out. We know Jordan Robertson will always tell us to call 988 if you need help. At the very least, you can call 988 and they will help get resources for you. And so
Mhm.
we want to make sure that our listeners are getting the help that they need. So
Yes,
thank
and
you.
you can also DM the Stay Mentally Strong Foundation, and you'll get a response super soon and get help, get in contact with therapists, therapy groups or men's groups. They have so many resources, and all you have to do is just DM the Instagram. So if
Yeah.
anyone is listening that struggles, that's a great resource.
Yep. Love that. Okay, Ellie, you have been eloquent today, Ellie the Eloquent. So wondering if we could just ask you our last question that we'd like to ask all of our guests. Ellie, considering your experience with grief, what do you now believe about Jesus Christ?
I now believe that Jesus knows us each extremely personally. And I think that growing up, it was kind of hard to comprehend. Like, there's so many people on the earth. How can he know me as I am and every tiny little detail of who I am? But the way that Jesus has helped me heal and how understood I have felt by him is just it's undeniable to me that he knows me so extremely personally. And I think about him in the Garden of Gethsemane all the time, and the undescribable pain and grief that I felt. He knows exactly how that feels. And more than anything, it's encouraged me to build a testimony for myself, not based on what someone else tells me is true, not based on what someone else believes, but ask God for myself. And he has proved to me that he knows me so personally. And it's just helped me feel not alone and to understand, um, to just carry on an eternal perspective and to know that I'm deeply loved and that um, whatever I face here, he's with me every step of the way.
That's awesome. Well, Ellie, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for sharing Shawn with us, Dad with us. We have loved learning about him and his life, and loved learning about you and what you're doing to help bring goodness into this world. And so we'd encourage people to listen to your podcast, to follow you on social media, and that would be another good way to get lots of light into your life. But thank you for joining us today on the Grief and Belief podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was amazing and such a fun opportunity. Thank you for letting me share my story.
Of course.
Thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their story of hope. If you know someone who might be blessed by hearing this message, please share it with them. We would love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review, and comment on our podcast so others can find it. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, as well as join our Grief and Belief Facebook group. Thank you to our sponsor, High Five Live Tours, where fun and joy meet on inspiring travel experiences. Special thanks to our producer, Misty Lynn Howard. Check out her history podcast called Faith Ignited. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.